By now, I'm sure you've noticed the mugshot scene around the world, and for Donald Trump's trouble, he has raised $20 million in the last 3 weeks for his campaign, so inevitably he will be the GOP nominee if he isn't indicted a billion other times and then eventually in jail by the time that all comes around. I don't know, as I've said on the show before, if this is the 4D chess of the Democratic Party to try to get him in that top spot so that Biden can beat him in the 2024 election, or if they just simply hate Donald Trump so much they don't care if their plan is backfiring and causing people to rally around him. But the one thing is true among it all, that this is causing a lot of us to lose our faith in American democracy, because these indictments, 4 in the last 5 months, are really not an indictment on Trump as much as they are our American stupidity. And to try to prove that, I want to try to lay out the facts for you about Trump's indictment in such a way that even if somehow you're a coastal elite, you've stuck your head in the ground and all you see is Rachel Maddow when you do so, whatever the case may be, I hope that I can try to at least give you an understanding of what is going on in such a way that you can think critically for yourself. I started the show talking about the separation of church and state, and many, many people have been told what the separation of church and state actually is and what it means, and how there can't be anybody that prays in a public school, as though that's what the separation of church and state is all about, and not about actually like religious freedom. So nonetheless, if we are going to move beyond kind of the ignorance of our age and the media kind of 24-hour news cycle that consistently not only moves us far beyond the questions about what they're reporting, but also rarely gets to the truth. If we're going to move beyond that and think for ourselves, I think we need to look critically at what's happening with Donald Trump, whether we like him or not, because I think there's a question at the end of all of this that I think needs to be answered. But let's look at the case first and foremost. So it seems obvious that this is a politically motivated abuse of power intended to manipulate the results of an election, which is odd, right? Because all of this is about Donald Trump's, or at least this Fulton County thing, all of this is about Donald Trump's attempt to usurp authority and to create some conspiracy to overturn the election results of 2020. But right in front of us is consistent evidence that the people who are actually doing that are Democrats. And again, of course, it is their playbook to do the very thing that they're accusing everybody else of doing. So nonetheless, here's the receipts for some of that. First and foremost, as we saw in the separation of church and state case with Engel v. Vitale, the left has been shoving down their views and their ideas, the minority upon the majority for a long, long time. Now, I think this is true specifically in the media right now. So the vast majority of Americans, I think, have enough cognitive ability to be very suspicious about what's going on with Donald Trump, but the media is colluding with the Democrats in order to make sure that people don't venture beyond their echo chamber to actually question what's going on. So let me give you a couple of instances where the media won't even report on the other side. So here's CNN refusing to actually air what Donald Trump has to say because of some concern with, quote, misinformation. So check it out.
It looks like Trump may decide to make public remarks before he gets back on his big private plane and flies back to New Jersey. If he does that, we're not going to take those remarks live, but we will cover them for their newsworthiness. As we've said in the past, there is a cost to us as a news organization of knowingly broadcasting untrue things. And given his previous remarks on the subject that we are almost sure he will speak on, we will not carry those remarks live. And you can be mad at us about it. We can take it. We're big.
Yeah, so apparently we can handle it if they don't report what Donald Trump says, but they can't handle it if they actually report on what Donald Trump said. So apparently reporters don't report anymore. That's something that we should be well aware of at this point in time. But that's not all. The media was on a kind of tour of joyful, jubilant celebration. They're not even trying to hide the ball anymore in terms of saying, oh, well, our democracy has just been shattered and this is a sad day for democracy. Biden was quick to go on, I believe it was Twitter, now X, was quick to go on there and start raising funds for his campaign the day that Donald Trump's mugshot was released on the internet in a not so strategic cover-up suggesting that, this is all a political ploy for Joe Biden. Needless to say, the gleeful media also wasn't even hiding the ball anymore in the fact that they were laughing joyfully at the fact that Donald Trump might actually have to spend time in prison. Check it out.
He will surrender himself for processing at an overcrowded jail with a reputation for violence and neglect. A jail that is accustomed to holding defendants facing charges up to and including violent crimes, where stabbings are frequent. Actually, 3 people have lost their lives over the last month. That jail is where the disgraced ex-president of these United States is heading right.
I mean, they're just bursting with excitement there. They can barely contain themselves. And the reason for that is, I have to just tell you, the vast majority of Democrats, if not all of them, just don't have moral values. And let me try to preface that. So if the Democrats really did have moral values as we look at Trump's indictment, they would be honest with themselves and honest with America about Joe Biden. Biden would have already been impeached if the Republicans were playing the same game as the Democrats. Now, let me take you back not so long ago to the jubilant celebrations about Russiagate and how Donald Trump being impeached for his collusion with Russians would mean that he would be thrown out of office and we would return to a semblance of stable democracy once again. Well, of course, now we know that all of that was a complete farce, as the indictments are against Donald Trump right now. Now, so let's also weigh here Russiagate based upon erroneous and fictitious information in the Steele dossier and more, and the laptop. Or we'll call it Russiagate and Laptopgate. Now, the Russiagate was totally built upon nonsense, whereas Laptopgate was built upon actual laptops from a crack-addicted president of the United States. Can you imagine if those emails or anything like it was found about Donald Trump, how quickly he would have been impeached? The real question is do the Republicans have the guts and the gumption to actually impeach Joe Biden? We'll see. But needless to say, what is on Hunter Biden's laptop is exponentially more damaging for Joe Biden than anything that Donald Trump has done up to this point in time. And I'll try to justify that here in a moment. But to do that, let's look at our dear friend Fani Willis, who is indicting Trump in Fulton County. Now, so a couple things you should know about what Fani is up to. Fani wants to have a speedy trial. She wants 2 months of preparation, and then she wants to jam this thing down the throat of the American people. Now, why would you suspect that is exactly? Why does she want to have such a speedy trial? Here we are in 2023. I mean, I'm going to talk to you in just a moment about a guy named Greg Coates, who is a pastor in Canada who had to wait 3 years to be acquitted of all charges for actually having church services during COVID. But here we are, and Donald Trump is going to be indicted, and then the court case is going to happen within 2 months, which seems convenient for the election that is coming up. All of this gets to happen before so that you can cast your ballot with all of this in mind. Now, that's not all. Fani Willis, back in 2021, was also rebuked by a judge for hosting a fundraiser while she was investigating Donald Trump. Now, the judge is not going to rebuke her very sternly for her inability to hide her partisanship, but he does state the obvious. Well, maybe when you're investigating the president, you shouldn't be hosting fundraisers for his opponents.
The title of your office and having on social media that you, as this political office holder, are holding a fundraiser for the opponent of someone that this political office is investigating. I don't know that it's an actual conflict, but I use that phrase, what were you thinking? Where the prosecutor thought I could prosecute the co-defendant of someone I defended. It's a what are you thinking moment. The optics are horrific. If you are trying to have the public believe that this is a nonpartisan, driven by the facts, and I'm not here to critique decisions, the decision was made, but if we are trying to maintain confidence that this investigation is pursuing facts in a nonpartisan sense, no matter who the district attorney is, we follow the evidence where it goes and ignore the fact that I hosted a fundraiser for the political opponent of someone I've just named a target.
And probably one of the most important things. If Donald Trump is going to be indicted for creating a conspiracy to try to overturn the 2020 election because he claims that there was election interference. Well, then, of course, Fani Willis, our dear friend, is also culpable because on Twitter, she suggested that because there were pipes that burst at a precinct, that some of those ballots got wet, and we need to see exactly where they went, and we need to make sure that they're all accounted for, and we need some accountability in this precinct because who knows if there's election interference going on. Now, she did that and much more, and then complained all throughout Trump's tenure about whether or not he was a legitimate president. Not to mention the charges that Fani is bringing up against Donald Trump. What you need to know is that these RICO charges that suggest that there was some racket, some criminal conspiracy with all of these players attempting to try to overturn the 2020 election is just ridiculous it's absurd on its face. What we know is that RICO cases have always been an attempt, because you don't have evidence, to try to get somebody within the kind of the racket to flip upon the person who is leading the racket. So all of this is to try to find a weak link who will testify against Donald Trump and tell Fani exactly what she wants to know, so that then they can use what that person says as evidence, because they're not actually charging Trump of anything. You can take the time if you want to go through the actual indictment and see the kind of spurious and ridiculous things that Fani is accusing Donald Trump of. Things like tweeting, things like asking for a phone number to check on a precinct or multiple precincts to see if everything went according to plan. Not to mention, there's this huge problem with Fani's case. Why did Donald Trump legitimately bring court cases in multiple different states around the United States if he didn't think that he lost the election and he was just creating some criminal conspiracy to try to overturn the 2020 election? All really great questions. But even pushing that all aside, there's just one simple conclusion I want to bring to you. If Trump did what he is being accused of, which inevitably, once again, like with Russiagate and with the quote-unquote perfect phone call, when Trump is cleared of all of these charges, will we then finally come to the place where we realize that all of this was a partisan attempt to try to attack Donald Trump? But even if it wasn't, all that means is that, fine, Donald Trump is corrupt. And there are people who are willing to try to go to corrupt lengths to get rid of him. Now, ultimately, you're going to have to ask yourself this question. If he did it, then our politicians are corrupt. If politicians that are coming after him and indicting Donald Trump are doing so to wield political power against their opponents, then they're corrupt. And now I have to ask you which is more likely, but more importantly, the whole point is that in either case, there is corruption on all sides. And perhaps we might need to put our faith in something bigger than what man can do.
So you just got done watching a small excerpt of a much larger episode. You can find the link to that full episode down below in the description of this video. So you definitely want to check that out, because if you like that clip, you'll like the much larger episode. And while you're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and click that little bell to be notified when great new episodes of Indicting come your way. Thanks for watching.